Okay, welcome to this episode of the Smart Leader Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I'm joined for the third time by the lovely Heather Gray for this sunny Friday episode.
Hi, Jess. How are you today?
I am good. I'm better for having you on the podcast. I'm better for the vent that I've just had with you pre-record.
Always. That's what we need our besties for, is to be able to talk about the way our days are going and how to get past them. It's so fantastic to be on the show again. Thanks so much.
Well, I'm really excited because actually on the topic of support, this is what we're talking about today. As you all know, or maybe you don't know if you're one of our newer listeners, you might not have recognized the fabulous Heather Gray yet. She is the only person that I would trust to mess around with my brain because, you know, mindset's one of those terrifying things where I kind of imagine you like virtually tweaking my brain with a little screwdriver every time we do anything. And Heather has worked with me, so I have been her client and she has been my client, and she's actually one of our amazing cash creation alumni. And has since gone on in the last, year? I want to say and a half, maybe two. How long have we known each other?
Oh, gosh. I think we met, I think, towards the end of
December 2016. Yeah, so it's 2 years.
Yeah, we're almost at 2 years, our 2-year anniversary.
Crazy. I'm getting a cake.
Isn't every anniversary the diamond anniversary?
So Heather is one of our successful cash creation alumni from 2016 as well. And that's kind of how we got to know each other. And one of the great things about Heather, as you will find out on this episode, is that she gives practical and actionable mindset tips for overcoming different things. There's no fluff when we chat. And I think that's probably where we should start, is the no fluff piece, because I think often mindset gets a kind of a rap. And I was the first person to admit that I gave it this rap of mindset's really fluffy. It's really woo. It's vague. I don't really understand how it works. And I think that actually, you know, having known you, being really good friends with you, I've been lucky enough to realize what mindset work is and the kinds of things that it covers off. But some of the listeners are probably like, yeah, we listen to Jess all the time and she doesn't really do that.
I think that mindset, a lot of times people think about mindset as being positive all the time, having a good outlook, being able to be knocked down and just picking yourself up by your bootstraps, dusting yourself off and moving to the next thing. But when we really tackle what mindset is, particularly when we're looking at what it means for our businesses, it means changing the stories we hold about ourselves and about our potential in real time so we can build the lives and businesses that we dream of. So for example, if we have this story that, and I'll use a personal example. So my background is in mental health therapy. I have my master's in clinical social work. And prior to starting an online business, I had a brick and mortar private therapy practice. And I would hear myself talking to clients, and I would have these moments of awareness and pride of like, wow, I'm really good at this. Like, I have a message, and maybe this message deserves to be bigger and bolder, and maybe it could reach more people. And that thought was one of the first thoughts that brought me to expanding my vision and my business to the online community. But then what quickly started to happen as I learned the nuts and bolts of what would be involved is how hard it was going to be. And that lead generation is way harder when you're trying to meet the millions in the online community versus just small town America. And before I was in cash creation and before I started to, learn from you how to put all the different pieces together, I had the thought of maybe I'm only good enough for small town USA. Maybe I'm actually not meant to be one of the people who's writing the books, getting on the stages and impacting millions and inspiring millions. That's the thinking error I had in response to a series of unfortunate events, discouraging things, and, sort of plans not being made. Mindset in real time isn't sitting and talking to somebody about how they feel only good enough for small town USA. Mindset in real time is, what are you going to do to change that story?
Yeah.
If you don't like that truth, what are you going to do differently so that you have a new ending? It's not sitting and talking about it. It's recognizing the sort of stories we're telling ourselves, calling BS on them, and then moving to the other side of it. That's what it means to have a healthy mindset.
And I think this is really important because one of the things that, or the kind of main topic that I want to talk about today is support. Because I have seen recently, and I wrote a blog about this recently, so if you guys have read my blog on what it means to be supported, then you'll be giggling away. But I've read a lot of posts recently around, what it means to be supported, and it's pay as much as you can, and then your problem will automatically go away. Like as soon as you hit the pay button, your problem will go and you'll be fine. And really the coaching doesn't matter or the support doesn't matter. And I think this is becoming really prevalent. And for me, it's a really serious issue within the entrepreneurial space, because there are no other spaces in the world where people are like, oh, just pay me as much as you can and your problem will be fixed. And it's like, well, no, that's not how it works. And I think that we're getting into a really dangerous place around what support actually looks like and how to identify when you need it.
And I think that one of the reasons why is people tell themselves a story. If I drop $10,000 on this coach, then I'm somebody who takes action. Yeah. Not on do I follow the steps that the coach directed me to take? Do I believe this coach has replicated that success for themselves so that they can then be in a place to do it for other people? I think we confuse, especially because entrepreneurs love the phrase the hustle, and they love action taking, and they're kind of obsessed with it. But they think that if they get in the room and talk about taking action, or they get in the room with a thought leader, or they invest in some super high powered coaching package, that means they're doing the work. But what doing the work means is saying, this is where I hurt. This is where I'm stuck. I don't know what to do next. Can you, from the outside perspective, tell me what might be going on and what do I need to do differently to get out of this place? That's doing the work versus talking about doing the work.
And I really like that, because that version is also about personal responsibility. And I'm really big on personal responsibility. And I think, part of asking for support is accepting your personal responsibility of, right now, I am not dealing with this well, or right now I have a skill that I need to learn, or right now I'm not currently performing at my best and I need to do something about it. And I think what we see online, like you were saying earlier, everyone thinks of mindset as being this positive thing. Oh, you're going to learn how to manifest stuff, and oh, you're going to learn how to make a vision board, and you're just going to think good things. And that's fine. That's fine. But my feeling on it is that then takes away a lot of personal responsibility from you to actually go out and do the thing. Like, once you've created the vision board, there's this kind of expectation that people are like, oh, well, cool, well, I'll just look at it. Okay, great. Well, looking at the vision board but not doing anything will not help you. So it is about this practical application of taking personal responsibility for what your problem is, seeking the right support, and then actually doing the unsexy, non-glamorous work, which is, okay, you've told me that this is my problem. You've told me this is how I need to go and fix it. Off I go and start making strides towards that.
And I think it's about there's two things. It's like a two-pronged fork. One is, don't expect to be rescued. Learn how to rescue yourself.
Yes.
And then, that's like such a huge part of it. And then the other part of it is recognizing that it's on you to identify what isn't working, and to say, I need help, and to ask for it, and to not just wait for somebody to save you, because that is, what really gets messy. You and I were joking a couple of weeks ago about how when you were out of town, I felt personally like without my biz bestie, I was floundering a little bit. Like I was making all of these bold actions. I was pitching myself to brick and mortars in a new way. I was showing up for my my business in a bigger, bolder way. And I didn't have you to check with. I didn't have you to read my email to say like, yes, that's a good email. I didn't have this. So, I know so many people, and I've had clients like this who say, well, Heather, I didn't know what you were going to say, or I didn't know what you were going to tell me to do, so I didn't do anything. Like, I missed you. Yes, I wanted you there, but I sent the darn email anyway. I walked into a real estate agency and said, hi, my name is, this is what I do, this is how I serve, I think I could help people. I didn't wait for you to say, go on, little girl, you can do it. I went and did it myself, knowing that if it didn't work, if it was a total bust, I could come back to you and say, I did these 3 steps. I didn't get the desired response. What could I do differently?
Yeah.
Which is completely owning it. It's recognizing I wasn't quite sure that I knew what I was doing. I was second guessing. Do you show up live? Do you not schedule? I had all of those second, sort of guessing thoughts. I had never done it before, but I wanted to do something new. So I tried something. And part of support is knowing like who your safety net is. And I sort of remember telling myself, and sort of as I was like stealing my backside a little bit, to say, and if it doesn't work, Jess will help me fix it.
Yeah.
But I'm also capable of fixing it myself, which I think sometimes when people are lost and they don't know what to do, or they're stuck in their own thinking error, they just want to keep talking about it. They want to go into a Facebook group and whine about it. They want to like go into their whatever coaching community they've started and say like, oh, having a really tough day, could use some support, really struggling today. And everybody makes them feel good about themselves and throws compliments and kumbayas up the wazoo. But there's no like, this is what you need to do differently so you don't feel this way anymore. That's like, I think what's missing, because support is seen as they're there, it'll be okay, when sometimes support is like, yeah, you took a left turn and you need to go right.
But this is what I think is the interesting thing. And there are certain people that haven't, like they can't be clients of mine, because what they don't understand is that not even what they don't understand, they don't want that kind of support. They don't want constructive support. And I think that's the term that I'm going to coin for it. Someone else smarter than me has probably done this already, but I'm like, screw it. If they haven't, we're trademarking it. Me and Heather are trademarking that. But it's this idea of constructive support. The thing that I love about you is that you're always like, there's no point in throwing kumbayas, or, you said you did a really fantastic thing about thoughts and prayers, and what's the real use of thoughts and prayers and action and what we could actually be doing differently. And I think that it's this idea that when you actually reach out for support, you have to get the right support for you. And that means knowing that sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable about what support you're going to receive. I've hired lots of mentors over the years, and there was a particularly public episode, which if you're in my Facebook group, I'm sure you will all remember. I hired a coach, and he said something to me that was, it was on a tough day. I'd been having a rough day, and he pointed something out that I was like, oh crap, that was really uncomfortable. And what he'd said was something about my community not really loving me. And I was like, ouch, that stung. And he pointed out that, actually there were lots of people in there who were just kind of there and disengaged. And I was like, oh God. And I had this complete tear-filled, snotty, oh my God, everyone hates me moment. But the reality was that actually when I calmed down after the initial kind of hurt piece, which we're all allowed to feel, right? Everyone's allowed to feel hurt. Once I'd calmed down and actually looked at it properly, I was like, no, that's right. There is a difference between the people who are hell yeses on paper and the difference between the people who are hell yeses and who've signed up and who've done the work and taken the action and got the results. And so I think, when you're looking for support, you have to be really clear on knowing what you're signing up for, and also being very clear that it's not a codependent thing. And that's something that I think crops up again in the online space, because people are so afraid to lose clients. We start telling clients, oh my God, well, if you don't stay with me, then you're never going to be able to cope. And we train our clients into this constant state of, oh my God, well, what will Heather say? Or what would Jess do? Or what would this happen? And so what happens is you then create clients who find it really difficult to think for themselves, to support themselves. And that damages them and you in two ways. One, you end up with really needy clients, and that's a nightmare. But also you end up with clients that can never progress, that can never get the results you want them to get.
Well, they stay in learning mode. So much of it is, and that becomes the mindset block that they have to overcome, is this idea that, we only should be focusing on what's next. It's like, this is where my business is at. This is where I would like to be in the next quarter. What do I need to do next to get there? And when you catch yourself saying, it can't happen because this, I don't know that I can get there because why, then suddenly you're giving your power away, rather than recognizing and tuning into the fact that you're entirely capable of taking a next step. You are entirely capable of figuring it out and choosing to move, but it doesn't happen until you do something differently. Rather than, I think what ends up happening is people think that if they just attend enough trainings, like, I got this email the other day and said, Heather, I did a search for you and I've listened to everything you've said on imposter syndrome. And I don't feel any different. And I
also,
said,
just as an aside, I know how many trainings Heather has done on imposter syndrome. So I'm like, that's quite a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, it was a whole binge list. It's a little on the obnoxious side of life, even, I would dare say. But here, and what I said, so what did you do in between trainings? Like, what did you do next? Because I think what happens is when we get stuck, we think relief means not feeling that way anymore. Relief means feeling better. But we don't find relief until we get on the other side of it and do something differently. And I think so many times people just get stuck in their own heads. And that part of getting support is saying, I have been going round and round on this and I'm not anywhere new yet. Where do I need to be and what do I need to be doing differently, because I'm stuck in analysis paralysis.
Well, this is the thing though. I think people get way too stuck up in this, I'm going to consume everything, and then through consumption, somehow it will create the action that I want. And I've always said this to people, it's not about information, it's about implementation. Mm-hmm. And this is the key thing that people miss. And when we ask for support, asking for support and hiring, that's only the first piece. And I think that's the bit where actually as consumers, we can feel like that's the most difficult bit, because that's the bit reality wise where we're like, we're going to have to make the investment. We're going to have to tell someone that we have a problem. We're going to have to select the person we want to work with. But the reality is that once you've overcome that hurdle, actually it's the rest of it that becomes the most challenging, because suddenly you have that person in your face every week or every other week or however you do it, saying, okay, well, here's my objective perspective. Have you done this? Have you done that? And, if you're lucky and you have a good coach, and there are some very good coaches out there, they're not going to give you a worksheet and be like, here you go fill that out. And that will identify all your problems and tell you how to solve them. They're not going to give you a 60-page PDF. They're going to sit there and they're going to say some things that are really nice and really flattering, and other things that make you feel uncomfortable. And they're going to ask you why you do things, and why you feel that's the best way of doing them, and where you think that's going to take you, and how you feel like that's going to help you scale or grow or do other things that you've said you want to do. And it's that part that's difficult, because automatically then we've been trained, I think, by society to be on the defensive, and when people ask us why we're doing something, instead of being like, oh, cool, and thinking about why we're doing something and explaining it, we go, oh God, they're asking me to justify why I've made this decision, and I am defensive and I am angry and that's not fair. And we automatically take things badly, rather than seeing as, wow, this person is actually holding space for me to give them my reasoning so that they can understand why I've made a specific decision, and whether or not that decision was the best one for me to make, or whether it needs tweaking.
Well, I think that's how we self-reflect, because we can't get out of our own way until somebody is scanning the lens back. Because when we're stuck, and usually the people who are the most stuck are the people who set some kind of goal or aspiration for themselves and they haven't met it yet. And when something isn't working, they take a magnifying glass to it and they look at it so darn closely that they can't scan the lens. And what you really need to do is, instead of zooming in, zoom the lens out a little bit to say, what are you actually doing? How are you actually showing up? Who are you actually being in this world? And how are you showing up for your business? Because that's how we see the big picture. It's funny, as you walk through that transition, I was thinking of all the people who so nervously and excitedly sign up for cash creation. And everybody's like, whoop, whoop, gotta make tons of money. Yes, money, money, money. And everybody feels really, really good about it. And then when they realize that they have to put themselves out there, that they have to ask for the sale, that they have to be vulnerable, they have to tell the world who they are, what they do, and how they serve, suddenly they like want to freeze and they want to stop and they want to take their toys and they don't want to play anymore because it's really hard. But then what we get to see is the magic that happens, because first they identified a need. They invested and asked you for support. They work with you for 6 weeks. I support them with their mindset wobbles. And at the end of 6 weeks, they have changed their story about themselves. They have a new ending to the chapter, but they don't get to have that until they go through the rumble, until they go through the, oh my gosh, I did everything wrong. Like for me, my issue is always, and it's still on some level, I think continues to be the demon and the ghost on my back is training my audience not to buy. Showing up in such a way that I'm effervescent and present all the time and super supportive and super loving and having an audience trained not to buy. If I never sat through that rumble as a student in cash creation, if I never said, but Jess, I have articles that are 1 million page views, I'm on this website, I've done this, I've done that, I'm not making money, and feeling like I want to throw something, then I don't get to say 6 months after cash creation, I had my first 10K month. 8 months after cash creation, I had my first 20K month. I don't get to own that success if I don't sit in that moment of, I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I think quite often we assume that people who are leaders in the space do not have the same issues. And it's funny because, I always get people who say to me, but you know how to sell, so it's fine. And I'm like, well, there are lots of other things I didn't know how to do and that I still don't know how to do. And give me a WordPress site and I'm like a kid faced with tying their pair of shoelaces for the first time. And I think that we forget that actually it's new level, new devil. There is always going to be something you don't know. There's always going to be somebody who's better than you at something. There's always going to be that next level that makes you feel uncomfortable, and that you really, unless you sit in the discomfort of it, you can't go through it. And I think that what we're seeing a lot of on social media is everyone going, oh, perfect penny. Yay, life's great. I'm doing great. I'm making the money I want. I've got the clients I want. Life is good. And then behind the scenes, they're going to every coach. They're going to every session. They're watching every free webinar, free live, downloading every PDF. And they're just stuck because suddenly, instead of getting targeted support to where they are, what's happening is everyone has conflicting ideas about how they should make it work, and whether it's a mindset problem, whether it's a strategy problem, whether it's a traffic problem, whether it's a this or a that or a health or whatever. And so suddenly, instead of having just the one issue, they've now got like 20, and they're trying so desperately to overcome that with information. But because they're not following one person consistently or one strategy consistently, they don't get any support, and that is the reality. Because let's face it, there are some people financially who cannot afford to invest in solutions. Fine. I get that, full stop, the end. But equally, if you're going to use free support, for the love of God, don't go out looking for 20 people who do the same thing, or who work in competitive areas, because they're one of the biggest jobs they have in their business is to make sales. And so they are going to tell you different things. They are going to have a different view or a different opinion or a different strategy to somebody else because they need a different USP. And so when you're looking for support, if you can't invest in it, or if you've got a low amount that you need to invest, follow the right person.
One of the things that I think sort of, that frenetic response of looking for everybody, consuming everybody, I think that listeners to the show can stop that nonsense for themselves by asking themselves a singular question: where does it hurt? So if they ask themselves that one question, where does it hurt me right now? What is, causing me the most suffering? What is causing me the most struggle? I think that what happens is that they can get centered on their unique need. They can get centered on their unique struggle and wherever they are in the whole mess. So one of the things I like to do when I'm walking people through this is they usually get it in a state of overwhelm. So what happens is, And usually, if I'm being honest, it's a state of overwhelm that happens because they're not making money right now. Their business isn't where they want it to be. They haven't successfully up-leveled. They're not getting in the cash. So they create this story for themselves that they need all the things. So they either need a strategy, they either need, a new coach, a new this, a new that. And what they end up finding instead is that if they get super still with themselves and they just ask themselves this single solitary question, where does it hurt? They will find, if they look at that and are sort of boldly, daringly, bravely enough willing to ask themselves that question, they can find the repetitiveness, they can find the habits, they can find sort of the things that they keep bumping up against that allows them to get to the next level. So people will be able to, if they simply say, where does it hurt? If it's a mindset issue, they're going to know that they're always feeling bad about themselves. If it's, I'm not bringing in sales, they're going to know that they're not successfully doing that. But if they don't ever ask themselves the question, what ends up happening is they do the maybe it's this. And that's how they get in that cycle that you're talking about here, where it's, well, maybe it's sales, maybe it's my funnel, maybe it's email marketing, maybe it's social media, maybe I'm not visible enough, maybe I need a YouTube channel, maybe I need to be somewhere else. And they chase the maybe tail to the point where they get entirely lost. So what really needs to happen is people can sort of, if you focus yourself on that singular question, then you can get to the other side.
And I think it's true. I think it's a really interesting one because I think, some people are inclined to go, well, if I look around and see all of the options, then I know that I'm making the most informed decision. And there's a certain part of me that I agree with that until a point. And so what I've always looked at is when I'm looking for support, like you said, I always identify what is the real problem here, what's really causing me pain right now. Right, who are the 2 or the 3 top people that I think could be a good fit for me in this space. And if I don't know anyone, I'll ask for recommendations, or I'll look at whether somebody I already follow recommends anyone for that particular thing. And I'll go out, and from those 3 people, I make it my rule to consume 3 pieces of content from them, maximum. And then I buy. And that's my thing. Then I implement if I'm not buying something, which is rare for me because let's face it, I'll buy anything. I'm like, I want to buy from you. If you have a sales page, I want to buy your stuff. But, I make it a rule for myself. You only consume 3 pieces and then you implement, or then you invest, or then you do something. Because otherwise you do end up stuck on this constant cycle of I'm just listening and consuming, and I'm not really doing anything. And the worst thing that you do then is you trick yourself into thinking that consumption is the same as implementing, and you end up just in the same cycle for 6 or 7 months until you get somebody else's outside perspective or outside eyes on it again going, hey, no, that's not how this works.
And I think that part of it too, one of the questions that I ask myself, I don't always follow, you taught me that 3 piece of content rule, and I tend to probably consume way more than 3 pieces before I buy. But one of the things that I would probably say really clearly that I do honestly do after 3 pieces is, do I have buy-in into this person?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a lot of times when we listen to someone's podcast on automatic pilot, or we consume their blog posts on automatic pilot, and we don't implement because we're never going to do it that way.
Yes.
But we think maybe there'll be one nugget that I can take away from this. Maybe there'll be one train of thought that I can learn from, and I don't want to miss out on it, rather than recognizing they've wasted a boatload of time because what works for one person isn't going to work for another if you don't have buy-in into it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think the other thing is we've got to stop being afraid of letting people go. When it comes to, and it's really counterintuitive, isn't it? And we were talking about this before we started hitting record. One of the things that I was saying to Heather was that, there are some people who've been in my community for years and years, and they still follow and they still implement and they find new things all the time. And there are other people who stay in my community and really they don't need anything anymore, or it's not even that they don't need anything. They've already found other people to follow and they continue to follow me just in case. And I'm like, it's totally cool. It's totally cool to leave somebody behind for a bit or put them on pause for a bit and be like, no, actually, I'm going to go and follow this train of thought for a little while and see where that goes. And it doesn't mean, I've had people, and probably the most interesting case study is I've had people who've been in my Dottie's membership who've been there right from the beginning and they don't leave, but sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm not going to be as active for the next month because I'm focusing on this, or I'm taking a course from this person. So I'm going to focus on that, but I'm not going to leave because I want the community support and I want, you there in the background cheering me on and doing the thing. But my primary learning at this point is coming from somebody else. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's a great way to look at it. So, you can always put people and go, yeah, I'm still going to follow you, or I'm still going to be in your membership, or I'm still going to be in your group. But my primary learning content isn't going to come from you right now. Right now, I'm going to learn and implement what somebody else is teaching me. And if I get time, I'm going to look at your stuff and I'm going to read your emails and I'm going to participate in what you're doing. But my primary focus is on learning this skill or doing this thing at this time.
And I think that's ownership. That when we talk about accepting responsibility, that's owning our journey. That is paying attention to what we need to be doing to move the needle forward in our lives and in our business. And that's the boss move. But I think a lot of times people act like employees in their own businesses, that they're not taking that leadership place. They're not taking that place of ownership of, I need to put my head down. I need to stay in my own lane. I need to focus on this one thing. Instead, they get dizzy and they create a sense of disorientation, of disconnection. They feel lost. And then they tell themselves they need all this support because they feel so gosh darn lost. When in actuality, if they had just gotten still with themselves and said, what's missing right now? What isn't working? I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to focus on that. And then I will lift my head up and figure out what's next.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that we have to touch on when it comes to support, and I think this is probably a big one for people, that is an unconscious event. Shouldn't I call it an event? Sounds like it's a party. But I think sometimes what can happen, and I see this with the rise of what I call the baby business coach over the years, is that some people will start in a completely different niche, right? They'll start as a health coach. They'll start in, relationship coaching. They'll start in as being an author or a speaker or whatever it is, whatever niche they're in, and they'll get coached by someone on how to be a coach. And so then they're like, oh, okay, well, this seems easy, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to coach someone on how to be a coach. And over the years, we've developed this little pyramid of coaches, coaching other coaches to be coaches, coaching coaches to be coaches, and blah, blah, blah. And it becomes difficult sometimes to separate getting the support that you need and what you are selling moving forward from that point. And I think
also too, it's owning your own expertise.
Yeah.
That some of it too is that what you're talking about is the desperate model, the chasing sales model, because people are so afraid that the thing that they're good at isn't going to make them money. And everybody sees business coaches teaching business coaches how to make money, that they think that's what they have to do. So part of real ownership is saying, I am really good at this and I'm going to stake my claim on it. I'm going to put this in the ground and I am going to be unapologetic about the fact that I'm good at this, and I'm going to build a business on it versus trying to build a business based on what other people are doing building businesses.
Yeah. And this is the thing. And I think, what we have to look at is when we're taking support, you take the support that you get and that you need for your business or that you need for your life or health, relationships, whatever. And you use that to improve you, because in improving yourself, you will naturally improve the other things around you. Those are happy byproducts. That's kind of the consequence of doing the different types of work. You improve your strategy, you will naturally improve your sales. You improve your mindset, you will naturally improve your resilience, your confidence, and therefore your bottom line, et cetera, et cetera. So, it is important to identify the biggest point at which you need support, but also post-support, being confident enough to step back. And this does go into hiring the right person, make sure that you're not having to have this kind of codependent relationship, making sure that when you walk away or that when you are left effectively to fend for yourself in the wild, that you are confident in the decisions that you're going to be making. And that, yes, you have your biz besties, like I have Heather and she has me, and other people have their own networks, that you get to sanity check things sometimes when you're not feeling great, when you're having an off day, when you've had someone reject your offer, but that you aren't jumping from coach to coach to coach and hoping for a different outcome every time and always wanting to learn new strategy, new thing in the hope that that's going to bring you better results. Because you've got to remember that you have to implement it to get the results in the first place, but also you have to maintain them, and maintaining them does not come through selling them to others and then trying to troubleshoot issues that you don't have or maybe don't have any experience of.
Well, and you have to do it consistently enough to be able to evaluate whether or not it worked. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we think about, why people jump to ship and abandon one thing for another. So much of what they're doing is they're not sticking with one thing long enough to see if it worked, and, I just gave you the example of when you were out of town, I pitched real estate businesses basically because I was in the summer slowdown. I could see the numbers going down for Q3. I wanted to be able to boost them up a little bit. I had the idea that I could go into real estate firms and pitch performance coaching to people. So I either, cold emailed or I walked into a couple of offices. And then the two people I heard back from both said, sorry, we only do this from people who are hired within and they have to be full-time team members. And because I own my own business, I just was like, well, I don't want to work for somebody, so I'm closing the door, and I moved on. After that, I got 2 points of contact with two people who had booked with me because they heard about me through those weird things that I did, where it was like, well, the in-person house isn't working for so-and-so. And then another person reached out to me and said, the in-house person isn't working for me. Can I hire you? Now, I got lucky. That didn't happen for any other reason than I got lucky. I took initiative the first time I walked in, but as soon as it didn't work, I stopped it. I said, well, that didn't work. I got 2 no's. I happened to get lucky, and these 2 people followed up with me. So a real good takeaway that I learned from this is that there is a niche market local to me that probably can use my services, but I can't just knock on a door once and then hear a single no and say that doesn't work. Okay, so I'm not going to pitch local businesses anymore. Instead, I'm going to try to do X, Y, Z. I assumed no. I totally made a thinking error. And if I hadn't followed up, I had $0. I got lucky because they followed up with me. And that was sort of my reflection time to be like, wow, I abandoned this idea entirely too soon. I could go about it another way. And that's, that's ownership. That's the boss move, to say, wow, I really effed that up. I left money on the table. Instead, now I'm going to go back and think about how can I turn this into a strategy now that I've learned this lesson, rather than, oh, wow, I got lucky. The next question, the boss move, is now what do I do with the lesson?
And everyone on the podcast is screaming at you, go listen to Jess's episode on follow-ups. I think it is support is really important. And I think the final kind of element that I want to touch on that I think is actually really important when it comes to support and seeking support, getting support, implementing, is actually acknowledging the support you received. So I've always thought it takes a big person to admit they need help, and it takes a bigger person to admit that they've had help. Because it's one of those things that isn't really talked about. And I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day. One of my friends is a 32-year-old man. And we were talking about the issue of men's mental health, because it's something that in the UK has been a really big issue recently. And there has been a whole spate of young men, unfortunately, who've been really mentally in a bad place, and they've been committing suicide. And we've had some of the highest rates of suicide in young men in the last few years, and it's really, really tragic, and it's a prevalent problem. And we were talking about it, and he was saying that one of the most helpful things that he has seen is that actually now people are coming out and saying, well, yeah, I had help for that years ago. And he was like, and I wish that sometimes they'd done it earlier. They'd said earlier, yeah, I had help for that. Because up until the point that somebody else not gives you permission to say, hey, I had that problem, it's fine, you're normal, but up until the person validates that the way you are feeling is a reality, that it is normal, that it does happen, that it can be overcome, sometimes it can be really, really hard to go out there and look for that yourself. And I think that this is something that we see in the entrepreneurial space quite a lot. Everyone's so desperate to be Perfect Penny because they think Perfect Penny is going to get a ton of clients and that everything's going to be great and sunshine and roses, that actually they forget that Perfect Penny has had numerous mentors, has taken tons of courses, has fallen on her ass more times than she can count, it has struggled behind the scenes, has had all of the same things going on family-wise, life-wise, relationship-wise that you have probably had. And she's had to overcome them just like you will. And instead of, making it this kind of secret, oh God, I had a sales problem, but I'm not going to ever tell anyone I had a sales problem, or I had a mindset issue, but I'm never going to tell anyone I had a mindset issue. I actually think it's much more beneficial for people to say and own. And I think that's the point at which you fully complete the support, when you can own that you had it and you went ahead and you braved it and you implemented it and you made it work for you. That's the point at which your problem is, I'm going to use speech marks, but solved, right? Because until you can admit that you had the problem and that you worked really hard to solve the problem, I don't think you are actually at that point where you go, yeah, fine, I'm cool with this. And I've accepted.
Well, the problem still owns you.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you can't say, because you're on the other side of it, once you said, I had this struggle, I needed help, I was stuck. If you can't get to the other side of it, then you stay as the person who has that problem and who has that struggle. If you can't own it, it just continues to own you. I think that one of the things that, your discussion of men's mental health is interesting to me, because I've been sort of observing this a lot, both in my history as a private therapist, but also, offering mindset coaches, mindset and performance coaching to leaders, is this idea that people are their personal brands a lot of times in their businesses. So when they sort of talk about having needed a mindset consultation, or they did a bad hire and they didn't know how to fire a team member, or they did something for their business and they were unsure to how to get out of it, it's so hard when your business is your personal brand to admit to not knowing. One of the things that is interesting for me is the therapy business came with a what's said in here stays in here rule. People were guaranteed privacy. Now in the online space, working with businesses, because I can say that till the cows come home, but people don't believe me, they're giving me non-disclosure forms to sign, and I'll happily sign it. People have a right to privacy. But I think what happens is they don't recognize the story that gets attached to that says there's something wrong with needing help with this problem. So if it were to be found out, that would mean bad things for my business. That would mean bad things for my reputation. Rather than recognizing all we really want is for Perfect Penny to freaking stand up and say, this is really hard sometimes. And I cry in my wine and I eat my Ben & Jerry's because I don't know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, because then Perfect Penny will get tons more sales, because we need people to talk about it being real. We need people saying it's really hard. Otherwise, I think that's part of why so many other people end up with unintended mindset problems, because they're looking at the perfect pennies and saying, well, I'm not perfect. Why isn't this happening for me? Oh, there must be something wrong with me. Rather than what your friend is telling you to say, when more people talk about, I got stuck, I tripped on my face, I figured this out, but now I have this gash going over that I need to heal from, it normalizes it. And it makes it more okay for other people to get real. And so often what we talk about on this show is relationship marketing. And until we're honest, we're not actually engaging in a real relationship with folks.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, the point we're making here is not, don't get people to sign non-disclosure agreements. Obviously, if you're handing over sensitive business information that's confidential, you don't want somebody to be able to go and use on a competitive basis. Yes, absolutely. You must have NDAs in place, and we're not saying go out and create warning, vulnerable post and then talking about how you're going to have to, live under a ban and feed your kids dog food or anything like that. That's not useful. What we are saying is that you have to be okay with letting people understand that there are learning outcomes to take from your mistakes, and that those mistakes, the failures, the successes have all made you who you are and have all gotten you to the point at which you're at, however far along that is. And the only way really to get to the next point is to look at, okay, well, how far have I come? How far have I still got left to do? What am I going to do in order to get there? And am I happy to acknowledge that I, A, have the problem, B, that I'm going to make the time to implement the solution, and C, that I'm going to be happy to, maybe don't discuss a traumatic thing in detail or something, but am I going to ever be happy with myself in the knowledge that I sought help and I got the results that I wanted? And am I going to be okay with standing up to that part of the responsibility post implementation?
Well, because if you think about the basic way people learn, so much of how we learn is by repeating it and saying out loud. So part of it is we haven't really absorbed the message. We haven't really absorbed the information if we're not also able to sort of let the cycle be complete and sort of participate in and now I'm on the other side of it. I didn't know how to do this. I got stuck here. I tripped here. I hired this person, they helped me with A, B, and C, and now I'm able to do D, E, and F. Yeah. If you don't complete the cycle and kind of put a stamp on it, that's the other way people end up staying in still learning mode, because they don't feel like they're done yet. They haven't made the mark. They haven't put the stamp. That's why, too, people stay in membership communities forever, or they, join Facebook groups and they just lurk, but they never participate or jump in on a discussion, because it feels so much safer. It feels like close enough to doing the work, but you're not actually standing on the ledge. You're not actually in the rumble doing the hard work and having the hard conversations.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So there you go, guys. That is how you need to identify if you need support, find the right support for you, actually use the support, and then how you react afterwards, whether you become somebody who is confident in their own abilities, who can move forward, who has a support network that they rely to sanity check to get help and advice, or whether you're somebody who finds it difficult to move forward after support on your own, and whether actually you need, ironically, some support to help with that. So thank you for coming on again, because
this was so good. Such an important conversation. I appreciate you so much for having it with me.
No, it's one of those things. I think it is important to start those conversations, and if you are somebody who is looking to get any kind of mindset support, and you're looking to move through issues around confidence, around resilience, leadership, performance, please make sure that you go and get in touch with Heather over at choosetohaveitall.com or in her Facebook group, which is the Choose to Have It All community. Or you can even go and listen to her podcast, which I will let you say the name of, because it sounds much better in your accent than it does in mine.
It's Business Mindset Mastery.
It's just the mastery.
Yes, and it's a lot of times it's a Q&A show, so people get to ask their questions of where they're stuck and struggling and get an answer close enough to real time. I sort of pre-record a week or two ahead of time, but they get immediate answers and can take immediate action. So it's a cool show to check out too.
So there you go. If you need any kind of mindset support, please go and find my identified Mindset Yoda without the ears, Heather Gray.
I still can't escape that description.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt with that on one day. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you head over to iTunes, you hit the subscribe button or whatever podcast player that you're using, and I will catch you in Monday's episode where we've got some really exciting stuff coming. We've got a really juicy, slightly controversial episode coming on Monday around some different sales strategies that you might be able to implement right now. I'll see you in the next episode.